welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Journal entry, May 14th, 2025. I never thought I'd keep a journal again after everything that happened at NASA. Scientific observation became a kind of poison for me after the model failure, the congressional hearing, the media circus. But old habits resurface when the world stops making sense. And today, nothing makes sense. It started with the barometer. The one Dad gave me before he died. Antique brass with his initials etched on the back. It's been hanging outside my porch since I moved to this backwater stretch of Florida coastline 8 months ago. This morning it read 31.2 inches of mercury. Clear skies, not a cloud to be seen. Yet the needle was dropping like a stone. Pressure change that rapid usually precedes a hurricane, but the National Weather Service had nothing on the radar. The Gulf was calm, gentle waves lapping at the shore beyond my property. I called the local weather station in Cedar Key, just to check, just to be sure. No one answered. The birds noticed it first. Around 10 a.m., the mockingbirds, cardinals, and warblers that usually create a constant symphony outside my window went completely silent. I stepped onto the porch and found the sky filled with circling flocks, countless wings creating spiraling patterns like ripples in a pond, moving in perfect unison, as if following some invisible conductor. That's when I noticed the light. At first, I thought it was just an unusual reflection on the Gulf, maybe an oil slick catching the morning sun. But the gleam was too concentrated, too steady. It sat on the horizon like a silver dollar, distinctly separate from the actual sun that was already climbing high above the eastern tree line. Just a strange, bright spot in the southwestern sky that had no logical reason to be there. My phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Florida Emergency Management Agency. Atmospheric disturbance detected over Gulf of Mexico.
No immediate danger.
Avoid prolonged exposure to direct sunlight. Further information to follow. Atmospheric disturbance? I've spent 15 years studying atmospheric phenomena, and whatever was on the horizon didn't match any classification I knew. Not solar flare effects, not unusual refraction, not volcanic ash dispersion patterns. I retrieved my equipment from the shed, the few instruments I'd kept after leaving the agency. Digital barometer, spectrometer, radiation counter. Basic tools, but enough to get readings. As I set them up on the dock extending into the salt marsh behind my house, I noticed something that sent a cold wave down my spine. The tide was rising. Fast. Too fast. The water had climbed almost a foot in the 20 minutes since I'd first stepped outside. The brackish water swirled with unusual movement. Small fish leaped in frantic arcs, as if trying to escape something below. The normally murky water seemed clearer, almost crystalline in the strengthening light. The light, it was definitely brighter now. A perfect circle of white-silver intensity, like a miniature sun rising hours after the real one. I knew I shouldn't look directly at it. Basic astronomy safety, but I couldn't help stealing glances as I calibrated my equipment. Each time I looked, it seemed slightly larger, slightly brighter. My phone buzzed again. NOAA weather radio. Unusual solar activity detected. No cause for concern. Monitoring ongoing. Residents in coastal areas maintain normal activities. Avoid extended observation of sky phenomena. 2 different agencies, 2 slightly different messages. That wasn't standard protocol. In my NASA days, we coordinated carefully to ensure consistency. Different messages meant confusion in the ranks, and confusion meant they didn't understand what was happening. That made 2 of us. The radiation counter registered normal background levels, but the spectrometer readings made no sense. The light was emitting across wavelengths that shouldn't be visible to the human eye. I double-checked the calibration, ran the scan again. Same result. A truck rumbled down my dirt driveway, Ben Collier's police cruiser. I'd met the sheriff a few times since moving here, usually at the general store where I bought supplies. He wasn't wearing his usual relaxed expression as he stepped out, mirrored sunglasses reflecting the strange dual lighting now casting double shadows across my yard. "Casey," he nodded, removing his hat. "You seeing this too?" "Got calls coming in from all over the county." "I'm seeing it," I confirmed, nodding toward my equipment. "Taking some readings." Ben squinted at the horizon. "Department got an alert about some atmospheric thing. You used to work for NASA, right? There's some kind of, I don't know, solar storm or something?" I hesitated. "I worked in climatology, not astronomy. But no, this isn't like any solar event I've studied." Ben's radio crackled. A dispatcher's voice, unusually tense. "All units be advised. State Emergency Management requesting coordination. Stand by for instructions. Repeat, all units stand by." "Lot of big government vehicles heading down the state highway," Ben said quietly. "Military transport trucks, black SUVs. Never seen anything like it. Not even for the category for that hit 3 years back." My phone buzzed a third time, but this alert was different. U.S. Department of Defense. Scientific research operation underway in Gulf of Mexico. Civilian observation teams requested to suspend activities. Compliance mandatory under National Security Directive 47B. I showed Ben the alert. His expression darkened. "National security? For a light in the sky?" He shook his head. "That doesn't sit right." The radio crackled again. "Sheriff Collier, please report to the county line checkpoint immediately. Military personnel establishing perimeter protocols." Ben replaced his hat, frowning. "I better see what this is about. You be careful with whatever you're measuring out here, Casey. Something doesn't feel right." As his cruiser disappeared down the drive, I turned back to my instruments. The spectrometer had stopped returning readings altogether, displaying only an error message. The digital barometer was fluctuating wildly, as if it couldn't settle on a consistent atmospheric pressure. A movement caught my eye. Someone walking along the shoreline about a quarter-mile south. An older man in faded overalls and a wide-brimmed hat, carrying what looked like fishing gear. Even from this distance, I could see he was staring out at the strange light. He raised a hand, as if in greeting to me or to the light, I couldn't tell. Then he turned and pointed urgently toward my dock. I followed his gesture and felt my heart skip. The water had receded completely, leaving the marsh bed exposed. Fish flopped in the sudden mud. Crabs scuttled frantically for cover. The tide had reversed completely in minutes, defying all natural patterns. My phone was buzzing constantly now, a succession of alerts from different agencies, each slightly contradicting the others. I silenced it and focused on the horizon. The second sun, I couldn't think of it as anything else now, had doubled in size. And as I watched, a thin black line appeared across its center, like a pupil dilating in a silver iris. It was looking back at us. Journal entry, May 15th, 2025. Last night, the second sun didn't set. The real sun followed its normal arc across the sky, dipping below the horizon around 8 p.m., leaving that other thing hanging alone in the darkening southwestern sky. It should have followed the same astronomical rules, the same physics that governs everything in our universe. Instead, it remained fixed, a perfect silver-white disk casting an eerie glow across the landscape, turning familiar shapes into twisted silhouettes. I didn't sleep, couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that black line bisecting the disk, that sense of awareness. I spent the night alternating between checking my equipment and scanning emergency broadcasts that grew increasingly contradictory as the hours passed. Dawn brought a landscape transformed. The marshes surrounding my property were completely flooded. Not just high tide, but a surge that submerged the lower portions of trees. The water had risen at least 6 feet overnight, and my dock was completely underwater. Only the elevated position of my house kept it dry. The flooding made no meteorological sense. There had been no storm, no rainfall, just the relentless pull of whatever celestial body now shared our sky. My isolation was complete when the landline went dead around 9 a.m. Cell service had become spotty overnight, with only emergency alerts coming through consistently. The last one arrived at 8:17 a.m. U.S. Coast Guard. Unusual tidal activity affecting Gulf Coast. Residents in coastal areas advised to seek higher ground. Do not approach shoreline or flooded areas. Water may contain unknown contaminants. Unknown contaminants? What did that mean? By noon, I spotted a small boat approaching through the flooded cypress trees. As it drew closer, I recognized the man I'd seen yesterday on the shore, weather-beaten face beneath a wide straw hat, probably in his 60s, steering an aluminum fishing boat with practiced ease. He maneuvered alongside what remained visible of my front steps and cut the motor. "You must be the NASA fella," he called up. "Mind if I come aboard?" Getting mighty peculiar out there, I helped him tie off to my porch railing. "Casey Winters," I offered my hand. "And I was with NASA." Past tense. "Elijah Moss," he replied, his grip firm despite his age. "Been fishing these waters 43 years. Never seen anything like what's happening now." Inside, I offered him coffee, a gesture of normalcy that felt absurd given the circumstances. Elijah accepted gratefully, his eyes darting occasionally to the windows where the dual lighting created overlapping shadows across my living room. "Fish are all wrong," he said finally, cradling the mug in calloused hands. "Deep water species coming up shallow. Shallow water fish heading upstream like something's chasing them. Found a hammerhead shark in the creek behind my place this morning. 10 miles inland. The tides are completely disrupted." I agreed. "Whatever that thing is, it has considerable mass. Enough gravitational pull to affect our oceans." Elijah's weathered face crinkled in thought. "It ain't just the water. You listened to the birds lately?" I shook my head. "Exactly," he said meaningfully. "They gone quiet. Even the insects, like everything's holding its breath." He was right. The typical symphony of Florida wildlife, cicadas, frogs, birdsong, had fallen silent. Only the gentle lapping of water against the house disturbed the unnatural stillness. My emergency radio crackled to life with a burst of static. "This is an automated message from the Florida Emergency Management Agency. All residents in Levy, Dixie, and Taylor counties are advised to remain indoors. Military checkpoints have been established on all major roadways. This is not an evacuation order. Repeat, this is not an evacuation order. Compliance is mandatory. Military's been setting up since dawn," Elijah confirmed, sipping his coffee. "Roadblocks on Highway 19, convoys heading toward Cedar Key. Saw a bunch of big satellite dishes being assembled over on Etsina Odi Key through my binoculars. Communications equipment or listening devices?" Elijah suggested. "Like they're trying to hear something." My phone buzzed with another alert. "Department of Energy. Temporary power outages expected in Gulf Coast regions as precautionary measure. Prepare emergency supplies. Outages may last 24 to 48 hours. Almost immediately, the lights flickered and died. Planned outage or something else?" "You got a boat?" Elijah asked suddenly. I shook my head. "Then you're stuck unless the water recedes. My place is on higher ground, about 3 miles northwest. Got a generator, supplies. You're welcome to come back with me." I hesitated, looking at my scientific equipment. Most of it was battery-powered, but without electricity, I couldn't charge anything. "I should stay. Record what's happening." "Suit yourself," Elijah shrugged. "But first, want to see something real strange?" He led me onto the porch and pointed toward the flooded marshland. The water's surface was oddly still, almost glassy despite the light breeze. As we watched, concentric ripples began forming, perfect circles expanding outward at regular intervals. "Been doing that since sunrise," Elijah explained. like something's pulsing underneath. The ripples aligned perfectly with the center of the second sun, as if responding directly to its position. "There's something else," Elijah said quietly. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small plastic bag containing what looked like wet sand. "Found this washing up everywhere along the shore." I opened the bag. It wasn't sand. Under closer inspection, the substance consisted of tiny metallic particles with an iridescent sheen, almost like microscopic scales. When I tilted the bag, they seemed to orient themselves, aligning in patterns that shifted with movement. "What is it?" Elijah asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'd need a microscope to." We were interrupted by the distant thump of helicopter rotors. 3 black military choppers appeared over the treeline, flying low toward the coast, toward the second sun. As we watched their approach, a strange vibration passed through the air. Not quite sound, more like pressure against my eardrums. The helicopters suddenly veered sharply, as if responding to an unseen force. One tilted dangerously before its pilot regained control. My emergency radio burst to life again, no longer the measured automated voice, but someone speaking urgently. "All aircraft return to base immediately." Repeat, "All aircraft return to base. Full retreat from Sector 7. Unexplained equipment failures reported. Do not approach the anomaly." Repeat, "Do not approach." The transmission cut off abruptly. The helicopters reversed course, disappearing back over the treeline. "They're scared," Elijah observed quietly. A convoy of military vehicles appeared on the flooded road leading to town, Humvees and larger transport trucks, navigating carefully through the water. One stopped at the entrance to my driveway. A figure in military fatigues emerged, scanning the property before approaching the house. As she drew closer, I could make out the insignia of the U.S. Air Force and the rank of major. Her expression was composed but tense as she reached the edge of my porch. "Casey Winters?" she called up. "Major Diana Hartwell, United States Air Force. I need you to come with me." "Why?" I challenged, suddenly protective of my small sanctuary. "Because you're the only meteorologist within 50 miles, she replied flatly. "And we need someone who can make sense of the atmospheric readings we're getting. Things are happening faster than our models predicted." "What things?" I asked. Major Hartwell's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the second sun now appeared to pulse slightly, its edges blurring and resharpening in rhythmic intervals. "That," she said simply, "is not a sun." Behind me, Elijah whispered something. "A prayer, perhaps." I turned to see him staring not at the sky, but at the water surrounding my house, where the concentric ripples had stopped. The surface was now completely still, reflecting the anomaly in perfect detail, creating the unsettling impression that we were caught between 2 identical phenomena, one above, one below, as if we were being observed from both directions. Voice recording, May 16, 2025. I've switched to voice recordings. Easier to document while on the move. Major Hartwell requisitioned me and my equipment at 1,400 hours yesterday. I'm now at a hastily established forward operating base about 8 miles southwest of my house. The military has taken over what used to be a county park, setting up a perimeter of concrete barriers, sandbags, and razor wire. A dozen large tents housing communications equipment, medical facilities, and command operations dominate the central area. The second sun, or the anomaly as they call it here, is noticeably larger now, perhaps 3 times the size it was when first appeared. From this angle, the black line across its center is more pronounced, occasionally shifting like the pupil of an eye adjusting to light. Sound of helicopter overhead. That's the 3rd aerial reconnaissance attempt today. The previous 2 returned with navigation systems fried and pilots reporting visual distortions. They won't fly directly toward the anomaly anymore, only in wide arcs around its periphery. Major Hartwell has been surprisingly forthcoming, likely because they genuinely need my expertise. This phenomenon defies their existing models. The gravitational effects alone should be catastrophic if it were actually a stellar body at that apparent distance. Yet the tidal disruptions, while severe, are nowhere near what they should be. It's as if the anomaly is selectively exerting its influence. Shuffling papers. I've been reviewing the meteorological data collected before I arrived. The atmospheric readings show patterns I've never encountered: localized pressure inversions, microclimate formations that shift every few hours, and infrared signatures that simply shouldn't exist in nature. The major theory among the scientific team is that we're witnessing some kind of spatial distortion rather than an actual celestial body, a thinning between dimensions or realities. Voice lowers, but that doesn't explain why it appears to be watching us. Brief pause. Sound of tent flap opening. Later, Elijah arrived at the base about an hour ago. The military personnel were initially going to turn him away, but I vouched for him. His knowledge of local geography and waterways could prove valuable, especially now that 40% of the county is underwater. The flooding has stabilized for now, but no one's certain if that's permanent. He brought news from the civilian side. Rumors spreading through the remaining population about mass evacuations in neighboring counties, though no official evacuation order has been issued here. Government broadcasts are becoming increasingly infrequent and vague. Some locals are talking about heading inland on their own. I showed the scientific team the metallic particles Elijah collected. Under microscopic analysis, they appear to be both organic and inorganic simultaneously, crystalline structures with properties suggesting carbon-based composition, yet with metallic conductivity. They respond to electromagnetic fields by realigning themselves, almost like iron filings near a magnet, but with more complex patterns. More disturbing is their increasing prevalence. What started as trace amounts along the shoreline has become a visible film on standing water throughout the region. Tests show the particles are now present in the drinking water supply, despite filtration. Sound of alarm in distance. That's the hourly alert. Every 60 minutes, precisely on the hour, all emergency broadcast systems activate simultaneously with the same message. Joint Task Force Helios Advisory. Remain indoors. Avoid direct observation of the aerial phenomenon. Do not consume unfiltered water. Further instructions pending. This message will repeat hourly. Joint Task Force Helios, named after the Greek sun god. At least someone at the Pentagon has a sense of irony. Distant shouting, something's happening. I'll continue this recording later. Later evening, the situation escalated about 2 hours ago. Sheriff Collier arrived with 3 deputies and a dozen civilians seeking shelter. They reported that the water in the western part of the county has started to change. Not just the metallic particles now, but actual transformation of the water's properties. Increased viscosity, altered refractive index, and most alarmingly, currents moving against gravitational flow, water traveling uphill in small streams. Major Hartwell initially refused the entry, citing containment protocols, but relented when Sheriff Collier revealed that his deputies had encountered a military blockade preventing westward evacuation. We're effectively being contained here, with the anomaly on one side and military barricades on the other. The civilians brought new emergency alerts different from those being broadcast inside the base. CDC Emergency Advisory. Potential biological contamination in Gulf Coast regions. Avoid contact with standing water and precipitation. Report symptoms including metallic taste, visual disturbances, or temporal disorientation to authorities immediately. Temporal disorientation? That's not a standard medical symptom. I questioned Major Hartwell about this discrepancy between internal and external communications. Her explanation was not reassuring. Different agencies, different priorities. The CDC is concerned about potential biological effects. Our focus is containment and understanding. When I pressed her on what exactly they're containing, she avoided the question. But I noticed something telling. Most of the scientific equipment is aimed not at the anomaly itself, but at the flooded areas beneath it. They're more interested in what's happening to our environment than the phenomenon causing it. Sound of footsteps approaching. That's Elijah returning from the medical tent. He volunteered to help process the newcomers, checking for symptoms mentioned in the CDC alert. He pulls me aside whenever we have a moment, sharing observations the military might overlook. His intuitive understanding of natural patterns makes him sensitive to subtle changes. Today, he noticed that shadows cast by the anomaly's light don't always match the objects casting them. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter than they should be, as if light itself is behaving inconsistently. Hushed conversation, barely audible. Casey, something ain't right with the sheriff. What do you mean? His shadow. When he stands in that silver light, it moves a half second after he does. Just a little delay, but it's there. I need to investigate this further, but discreetly. The military scientists are documenting the physical effects of the anomaly, but they might miss subtler psychological or perceptual changes. If the sheriff is experiencing temporal disorientation, there could be others. Sound of emergency radio activating. Another unscheduled alert. USGS seismic monitoring. Unusual subterranean activity detected along Gulf Coast fault lines. No immediate tsunami threat. Remain vigilant. Report ground disturbances or structural damage. Seismic activity now? The anomaly's influence extends below ground as well as through our atmosphere and waters. It's as if every natural system is responding to its presence. Sound of tent flap opening. Major Hartwell just entered with 2 researchers. She wants my analysis of some new atmospheric readings. I'll continue this recording when I can. Later night. It's after midnight now. The base operates around the clock, lights blazing despite the eerie luminescence from the anomaly. I've been reviewing the new data. Atmospheric composition shows increasing levels of noble gases, particularly xenon, which is extremely rare in Earth's atmosphere. The source appears to be evaporation from the standing water, suggesting the metallic particles are somehow catalyzing atmospheric changes. Hush tone. I need to document something disturbing. About an hour ago, I witnessed Major Hartwell in what she thought was a private communication with her superiors. She was in the communications tent, door partially open. I heard her clearly state, "The convergence is progressing faster than projected. Phase 2 indicators present in multiple subjects. Recommend accelerating the containment perimeter to Isolation Protocol 7. Whatever convergence means, the military knew about it before the anomaly appeared. This isn't just observation and response. They anticipated this, or something like it. The most troubling development is what happened just as I was leaving the research tent. A monitor displaying water sample analysis briefly changed, showing not our local readings, but similar data tagged with coordinates from the Pacific Ocean, the Baltic Sea, and Lake Baikal in Russia. This isn't just happening here. The second sun hasn't risen only over Florida. Voice recording May 17, 2025. The laws of physics are breaking down. I've been documenting the anomaly's effects for nearly 18 hours straight now. What began as subtle inconsistencies has evolved into unmistakable violations of fundamental physical principles. Light no longer travels in straight lines near the anomaly. Gravity fluctuates in measurable waves. Time itself appears to be affected, with synchronized atomic clocks showing discrepancies of up to 3 minutes depending on their orientation toward the second sun. Sound of papers shuffling. The military researchers are attempting to quantify these effects with increasingly complex instruments, but their models keep failing. You can't model what doesn't follow predictable laws. I've suggested we need to approach this from a completely different angle, not as a physical phenomenon, but as something intentional. Major Hartwell shut that down immediately. Stick to meteorological analysis, Mr. Winters. Leave the theoretical frameworks to the specialists. But I've seen their specialists huddled in corners, whispering about dimensional rifts and quantum entanglement cascades. They're as lost as I am. The difference is that I'm willing to consider explanations beyond our current scientific paradigm. Distant rumbling sound. That's the 7th microtremor today. The USGS team has confirmed they're emanating from directly beneath the anomaly, but the patterns don't match any known seismic activity. The vibrations come in sequences that almost resemble communication. Brief pause. Sheriff Collier's condition has deteriorated. What began as a slight delay in his shadow has progressed to noticeable lapses in his perception of time. During this morning's briefing, he responded to questions several seconds before they were asked. When this was pointed out to him, he became agitated, insisting everyone else was out of sync. The medical team has him under observation now, but they're clearly unsure how to treat temporal dysphoria. He's not the only one affected. 3 civilians who arrived with him are showing similar symptoms, along with one of the military technicians who spent extended time collecting water samples. All 5 share one common factor: direct exposure to the altered water. Sound of door opening. Later, Elijah found me a few hours ago with an unusual request. He wanted to show me something away from the base. Major Hartwell was occupied with a situation involving one of the perimeter sensors, so we slipped out unnoticed. He led me to a small hillock about half a mile east of the compound, one of the few elevated spots not yet submerged. Been watching the water from here, he explained, gesturing toward the flooded landscape stretching toward the horizon. It moves wrong. At first glance, the water's surface appeared normal, gentle waves reflecting the anomaly's silver light. But after a few minutes of observation, I noticed what Elijah meant. The ripples weren't consistent with wind patterns. Some areas moved against the breeze. Others remained perfectly still despite gusts. Most disturbing were the places where the water formed perfect geometric patterns, hexagons and octagons appearing and disappearing at regular intervals. "That ain't natural," Elijah said softly. "Water doesn't make shapes like that." As we watched, a large section of water about 100 yards out suddenly brightened, as if illuminated from below. The light pulsed 3 times before fading, leaving a perfectly circular patch of water that reflected like polished metal. "Been happening more frequently," Elijah added, "and in different places, like something's moving underneath." I asked him why he hadn't reported this to the military researchers. "Don't trust them," he replied bluntly. "They ain't telling us everything. Been listening to the radio chatter on my old CB. National Guard units are setting up quarantine zones 50 miles inland. Why do that if this is just a local phenomenon?" Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with an alert I hadn't seen before. NASA Solar Observation Network. Unusual solar flare activity detected. Temporary disruptions to electromagnetic field projected. Satellite communications may be affected. This is not connected to ongoing Gulf Coast situation. Not connected? The timing seemed too convenient. I showed the message to Elijah. "Covering their tracks," he muttered, giving folks an explanation for when communications go down. We started back toward the base, but stopped when we noticed something bizarre happening with our shadows. Instead of projecting normally from our feet, they were stretching in multiple directions simultaneously. One from the regular sun, one from the anomaly, and inexplicably, a third shadow that seemed to emanate from the water itself. Elijah stared at the impossible shadows, then looked at me with genuine fear. "Casey, what if it ain't just watching? What if it's coming through?" Sound of helicopter approaching. Later evening. We barely made it back to base before Major Hartwell organized a full-scale search. She was furious, placing us both on restricted movement, essentially confined to quarters except when specifically requested for consultations. Her explanation: "This is a containment zone with established protocols. Unauthorized excursions compromised the entire operation." But her anger seemed disproportionate to our minor infraction. Later, I overheard her speaking with one of the senior researchers. They were at Observation Point Echo. Full exposure to the reflection vectors. They'll need to be monitored. Reflection vectors? They've been mapping the anomaly's light reflections on the water. Whatever Elijah and I witnessed was something they're actively studying, and apparently, something they consider dangerous enough to warrant medical observation. An hour ago, I was summoned to the main research tent. The assembled team looked grim. New data had come in from other sites, confirmation of my suspicion that this isn't isolated to Florida. Similar anomalies have appeared over the Pacific Ocean, the Baltic Sea, and Lake Baikal, all sharing the same characteristics: all exhibiting the same gravitational and temporal distortions. More concerning were the atmospheric readings. The xenon levels have increased exponentially in the past 6 hours, along with other noble gases not normally present in our atmosphere. The air itself is being terraformed. I asked the obvious question, terraformed for what? No one answered directly, but one researcher pushed a tablet toward me showing a complex molecular structure. This was extracted from water samples taken beneath the anomaly. The structure is changing, becoming more complex by the hour. I recognized elements of carbon-based life, but arranged in configurations that shouldn't be stable under Earth's conditions. Unless those conditions were being actively altered, my insights weren't welcomed. I was dismissed shortly after, but not before noticing a secured tent I hadn't seen before, heavily guarded with biohazard markings. Something or someone is being isolated there. Sound of emergency broadcast system activating. The hourly alert has changed. Joint Task Force Helios Directive. Phase 2 protocols activated. All personnel maintain minimal exposure to untreated water and direct anomaly illumination. Shadow distortions should be reported immediately. Use only approved communication channels. Phase 2. The same terminology Major Hartwell used in her private communication. Whatever they were anticipating is progressing on schedule. Sound of commotion outside. Sheriff Collier has escaped the medical tent. I can hear them searching for him now. The concerning part isn't just his escape, it's how he managed it. According to the guards, he wasn't there anymore. As if he'd phased through the containment. Knocking sound. Someone's at my door. It's Elijah. Hushed. Urgent tone. Casey, we need to leave. Now, I've seen what they're hiding in that secured tent. It's not human anymore. And I heard the Major talking about convergent subjects being moved to a secondary site before full manifestation. We're running out of time. The base alarm just activated. I don't know if it's related to Sheriff Collier or something else, but it might provide cover for us to move. I'm going to hide this recording device and continue when I can. Sound of door opening. Major Hartwell? What are you? Sound of struggle. Then silence. Voice recording May 18th, 2025. Testing 1, 2. I don't know if this is working. They confiscated my original recorder, but I managed to retrieve this old dictaphone from Elijah's pack. The sound quality is poor, but it's all I have now. Static interference. They've moved us to what they're calling a secondary observation station, though containment facility would be more accurate. It's a repurposed elementary school about 15 miles inland, surrounded by 3 layers of security. Chain link fence, military personnel, and some kind of electromagnetic barrier that makes my skin tingle when we pass through it. I counted 6 guardhouses and at least 30 soldiers on our way in. After Major Hartwell caught me recording last night, I was sedated. I woke up during transport, briefly glimpsing the landscape through the military vehicle's windows. The flooding has spread much farther inland than I realized. Roads are submerged under feet of water that gleams with that unnatural metallic sheen. And the water, it moves wrong, forms patterns, follows vehicles like it's curious. Pause. Sound of movement. I'm in what used to be a classroom. Maps of Florida still hang on the walls. Cheerful cartoons of alligators and palm trees now watching over scientific equipment and military hardware. They've assigned me here because they still need my meteorological expertise, but I'm no longer trusted to move freely. A guard remains posted outside my door at all times. Elijah is being kept elsewhere in the building. I haven't seen him since we arrived, but one of the technicians mentioned he's cooperating with the biohazard team. What that means, I don't know. Major Hartwell visited an hour ago, her manner strangely altered. The stern military demeanor has been replaced by something more analytical. She watched me with an intensity that felt invasive, as if cataloging my every micro-expression. The anomaly responds to observation, she informed me without preamble. We've confirmed it across all 4 manifestation sites. Concentrated human attention appears to stimulate growth and activity. It knows we're watching it? I asked. Or it feeds on the act of being perceived, she replied. Quantum observer effect on a macro scale. The more we study it, the more it changes. The more it expresses itself. She showed me satellite imagery of all 4 anomalies: Florida, Pacific, Baltic, and Baikal. Each had grown significantly, and each displayed that same unsettling dark line across its center. The resemblance to a pupil in an eye was undeniable. We're implementing observation protocols, she continued, limiting direct visual contact, rotating observation teams, using primarily instrumentation rather than human eyes. That's where you come in. We need atmospheric modeling that doesn't require direct observation. I asked the question that had been haunting me since I saw Sheriff Collier's shadow move independently. What happens to people who look at it too long? Major Hartwell's expression tightened. Classified, but as she turned to leave, she hesitated at the door. Don't look at it directly anymore, Casey. Not even through windows. Not even at its reflection. Some things once seen can't be unseen. And some things, once they see you, don't look away. Sound of emergency broadcast system. The alerts now come every 30 minutes. Emergency directive. All civilians must avoid direct observation of the sky. Cover all windows. Do not attempt photography or video recording of aerial phenomena. Compliance is mandatory. Violations will result in immediate detention. Sound of paper rustling. I've been reviewing the atmospheric data they've provided. The noble gas concentrations have reached levels that should be toxic, yet somehow air quality readings remain breathable. It's as if our atmosphere is being subtly recomposed without triggering our biological alarms. The changes are happening just slowly enough that our bodies are adapting. Voice lowers, but adapting to what? And for what purpose? Door opening sound. Later, a technician just delivered new data. Weather patterns across the Gulf of Mexico have begun moving in mathematically perfect spirals centered on the anomaly. Cloud formations are arranging themselves in complex fractal patterns visible from orbit. Natural weather systems don't behave this way. It's as if the atmosphere itself is being orchestrated. More disturbing is what happened during the delivery. The technician, a young woman I hadn't seen before, passed me the data tablet, and our fingers briefly touched. In that moment, I experienced a flash of something. Not a vision exactly, but a sensation of standing beneath an vast, ancient sky filled with countless watching eyes. The feeling vanished when contact broke, but the technician's knowing look suggested she felt it too. They pulled Elijah from the tank an hour ago, she whispered quickly. He's in medical tent B. The sheriff is gone. Before I could question her, she left. Tank? What tank? Static interference increases. The anomaly's influence on electronic equipment is growing stronger. Communications are becoming unreliable. The base switched to analog systems this morning for critical functions. Through my classroom window, I can see a sliver of sky. The regular sun is setting, which means the anomaly will soon be the only light source. Night brings the most pronounced effects. Temporal distortions intensify in darkness. Last night, according to the research notes I glimpsed, 3 researchers experienced temporal displacement episodes, ranging from minutes to hours. One reported living through the same 15 minutes repeatedly until the sun rose. Sudden knocking. Later night, I managed to slip out during shift change. The school's layout is confusing, repurposed hallways leading to secured areas with makeshift signage. I was searching for medical tent B when I found something else. A large gymnasium converted into what they're calling the reflection chamber. The space was dimly lit, the windows blacked out. In the center sat an enormous tank of water, perfectly still, its surface reflecting ceiling-mounted screens displaying the anomaly from various angles. Indirect observation to minimize direct exposure. A team of researchers in protective gear monitored instruments surrounding the tank. And in the water, shapes moved. Not physical objects, but patterns in the fluid itself, like ink dropped into water but moving with purpose. Forming and reforming into complex geometric structures that reminded me of neural networks, expanding and contracting in rhythmic pulses. A researcher noticed me and quickly ushered me out, but not before I glimpsed something rising from the water's center. A column of fluid defying gravity, reaching upward like a probing finger. I finally located Medical Tent B, a classroom with hospital equipment hastily installed. Elijah was there, unconscious but breathing, attached to monitors. His skin had an unnatural sheen, almost pearlescent in the fluorescent light. Most alarming were his eyes, partially open, revealing pupils expanded into perfect horizontal lines, just like the line across the anomaly. A medical chart hung nearby. I only caught fragments. Subject shows advanced manifestation, cellular restructuring, synchronized brain activity with Baltic subject. A nurse spotted me and raised the alarm. I fled, barely making it back to my assigned room before security flooded the hallways. Hushed tone. They're not just studying the anomaly. They're studying what it does to people, what it's turning them into. My emergency radio just activated with an unscheduled broadcast. National Weather Service. Unprecedented meteorological event developing over Gulf Coast states. All residents advised to seek secure shelter immediately. Do not attempt to evacuate without official authorization. Remain indoors. Avoid windows. The lights just went out. Emergency generators have kicked in, casting everything in dim red illumination. Through my narrow window view, I can see the sky has changed. The anomaly isn't just a disk anymore. It's expanding, sending out tendrils of silver light that streak across the darkness like probing fingers. I hear shouting in the hallway, something about a breach in Sector C, where they're keeping Elijah. Sound of alarms. The door to my room just opened on its own. No one's there, but I can hear Elijah's voice from down the corridor. Casey, come see. It's beautiful when you understand. The water is the key. The water connects everything. I don't think that's really Elijah anymore. Sound of glass breaking. The window, it's cracking from the outside, as if under pressure. There's water seeping through, but it's moving against gravity, flowing upward across the glass. It's forming shapes, letters, a message. Look up. Static intensifies. I won't. I can't. But I can feel it watching me, waiting for me to return its gaze. The pressure building behind my eyes is almost unbearable, like something trying to see through them from inside my own head. Someone's in the doorway now. It's Major Hartwell, but her shadow stretches behind her in an impossible shape, branching and twisting like a tree of darkness. It's too late, Casey, she says, her voice oddly calm. The sky has been watching us for millennia. Now it wants to be seen in return. Look up. Everyone must look up. Sounds of struggle. I have to. Recording cuts off abruptly. Voice recording, May 19th, 2025. Time unknown. Static, followed by uneven breathing. I don't know when it is anymore. The clocks all show different times. My watch says 3:47 a.m. The wall clock reads 11:23 p.m. And the military timepieces are cycling through numbers seemingly at random. The sun, the real sun, has risen and set twice since my last recording, but I can't say with any certainty how many hours or days have actually passed. I managed to barricade myself in what appears to be a supply closet after escaping Major Hartwell. In the chaos following the power outage, I slipped away while she was distracted by something outside the window, something I refused to look at directly. The emergency generators are failing intermittently, plunging the facility into darkness for stretches that feel both infinite and instantaneous. Sound of distant alarm, distorted and warped. Those alarms have been cycling for hours, speeding up and slowing down like a warped record. Sometimes they stop completely, leaving a silence so profound I can hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then they'll suddenly resume mid-tone, as if time itself had hiccuped. I found a military radio in here. The emergency broadcasts have become increasingly erratic. Emergency alert system. All civilians must. Static. Timeline divergence detected in sectors 7 through 12. Remain in designated temporal anchor points. Do not attempt to. Garbled, Chronological displacement is prolonged tone. Look away. Between alerts, I've been picking up fragments of military communications. They're no longer using encryption, either because systems are failing or because secrecy no longer matters. What I've heard confirms my worst fears. This isn't isolated to Florida. The phenomenon is accelerating globally, with reports of temporal fractures appearing near all 4 anomalies. Paper rustling. I found these notes wedged in the radio case. They appear to be from Major Hartwell's briefing 3 days ago. Phenomenon classification upgraded to eschatological event category 1. Standard containment protocols insufficient. Project Kronos activated under joint international authority. Scientific consensus. Anomalies represent tiers in space-time continuum, not extraterrestrial objects as previously theorized. Origin point cannot be determined, potentially extra-dimensional. Current working theory suggests entities from outside conventional physics attempting to establish observational foothold in our reality. There's a hastily scrawled addition at the bottom. Baltic site complete breach. Contact lost. Evacuation failed. Shuffling sounds, followed by footsteps. Wait. Someone's coming. Door opening. Recording resumes. Voice hushed. Major Hartwell found me. But she's different. The military precision is gone, replaced by a strange detachment. Her pupils have developed that same horizontal line, though less pronounced than Elijah's. She didn't try to detain me. Instead, she sat down beside me and spoke with unsettling calmness about what's happening. The first anomaly appeared 6 months ago, she said. Barely detectable. A pinprick in the fabric of reality over the Baltic Sea. We monitored it, studied it, pointed every observation device we had at it. And it grew. According to Hartwell, something exists in the space between spaces, dimensions that run parallel to our own but operate under entirely different laws of physics. These entities, she called them observers, have been trying to establish contact with our reality for centuries, manifesting as brief glimpses, strange lights, unexplained phenomena. But now they've found a way to create stable tiers in the membrane between worlds. They're curious about us, she explained, but their curiosity is transformative. The act of their observation changes what they perceive, just as our observation of them expands their presence here. It's a feedback loop we should have broken immediately, but we couldn't resist studying them, looking at them. Now it's too late. She showed me images on her tablet, satellite captures from around the world. The Baltic anomaly has expanded to cover most of northern Europe, its center now a swirling vortex of light. The Baikal site shows bizarre geometric structures rising from the lake, crystalline formations that appear to be growing like organic matter. And the Pacific anomaly has developed what appears to be a network of luminous filaments stretching across the ocean surface, pulsing in complex patterns. Reality is thinning, she said. Time first, hence the temporal inconsistencies, then physical laws. Eventually, the barrier will dissolve completely. When I asked why they haven't evacuated civilian populations, her answer chilled me. There's nowhere to go. The effect spreads, and those exposed longest become conduits, like Elijah, like Sheriff Collier, like her. Static interference increases dramatically, then subsides. I'm losing track of my thoughts. My memories feel jumbled, some moments crystal clear while others blur together. I can recall my childhood with perfect clarity, yet can't remember how I got from my classroom to this closet. Sometimes I experience the same conversation with Major Hartwell multiple times, each version slightly different. Am I repeating time, or is my mind fracturing? Emergency alert sound. Attention all personnel. Reality anchor protocols now in effect. Cognitive stability measures mandatory for all staff. Report to designated perception chambers for calibration. This is not a drill. Temporal fragmentation has reached critical levels. Hartwell explained the perception chambers before she left. Rooms where they're attempting to stabilize localized reality through synchronized human observation. A desperate measure, She believes certain individuals might be able to serve as anchors, their perception temporarily reinforcing normal physics within limited areas. That's why they brought me here, not just for my meteorological knowledge, but because preliminary tests showed I have perceptual stability. She wants me to join the anchor program, says I could help stabilize a section of the facility, but I don't trust her. The horizontal line in her eyes has grown more pronounced even during our conversation. Whatever she once was, she's becoming something else now, a bridge between realities. Sound of water dripping. There's water seeping under the door. Not normal water, it moves with purpose, forming those same intricate patterns I saw in the reflection chamber. I can almost understand them now, like a language on the tip of my tongue. Sound of papers being shuffled. I found Elijah's notebook wedged between supply boxes. The first half contains his usual nature observations, tide patterns, wildlife behavior, weather notes. Then it changes. The handwriting becomes more precise, mathematical. Pages of equations I don't understand. Diagrams of the human brain with modifications sketched in. The final entry, dated 3 days ago, reads, "The water is their medium. They cannot exist in our atmosphere directly, so they're changing it molecule by molecule, preparing us. The second sun isn't arriving, it's being built. And we are the building blocks." Glass breaking in distance. I can hear shouting down the hallway. Someone screaming about shadows moving independently of their owners. The emergency lights are flickering faster now, creating a strobing effect that makes movement appear jerky and discontinuous. Through the small window in this closet, I can see part of the parking lot. Military vehicles are arranged in a perfect circle, and soldiers stand facing outward, perfectly still despite the chaos I hear inside the building. Above them, the sky, I can only glimpse it peripherally, but it's wrong. The stars are moving, forming patterns, constellations rearranging themselves into what looks like an enormous circuit diagram centered on the second sun. Heavy breathing, the water under the door is rising, still moving in those hypnotic patterns. I should be afraid, but I'm finding it increasingly difficult to maintain emotional continuity. Fear comes in waves, then vanishes into fascination, then numbness. I understand now why Hartwell wants me as an anchor. I'm still perceiving reality linearly while others experience time in fragments. My mind is still interpreting sensory input according to familiar physical laws. I'm still human, but for how long? The radio just broadcast a new message, not an emergency alert, but a calm, measured voice speaking with perfect clarity despite the electronic distortion affecting all other signals. Those who look upon the new sky will be the first to understand. Those who drink the new water will be the first to change. Evolution requires adaptation. Adaptation requires perception. Perception requires observers. I think it's talking directly to me. Sound of door handle turning. Someone's trying to get in. Multiple people judging by the shadows visible beneath the door. They're moving in perfect synchronization, like a single organism with multiple appendages. And the water, it's forming a perfect reflection of my face on its surface, but with horizontal slit pupils. Radio static intensifies. Another emergency broadcast cutting through. This is not a test. Reality stabilization protocols have failed at all 4 primary sites. Structural integrity of spacetime declining at exponential rate. All personnel should proceed to designated observer stations immediately. Civilian advisory. Seek underground shelter. Avoid all bodies of water. Do not look at the transmission cuts off abruptly. The door is opening. It's Elijah, or what used to be Elijah. His skin has that same pearlescent quality I noticed before, but more pronounced now, almost translucent. Behind him stands Sheriff Collier, similarly transformed, and others, researchers, soldiers, all moving with that same synchronized precision, all with the horizontal slit pupils. "Casey," Elijah says, his voice overlapping with itself like multiple recordings played simultaneously. "It's time to see properly. The anchors are failing. Reality needs new observers to stabilize the transition. What transition? I manage to ask. Between what was and what must be, they respond in perfect unison. Between blindness and sight, between singularity and multiplicity, they're reaching for me now. I don't think I can. Loud crashing sound, followed by rushing water. The ceiling just collapsed. Water is pouring in, not from pipes but from what should be empty air above, defying gravity, flowing upward and downward simultaneously. I'm pressed against the back wall, the radio my only connection to whatever remains of normal reality. Through the broken ceiling, I can see the sky directly for the first time since the facility lockdown. The second sun has expanded, consuming nearly half the visible sky. But it's not a sun at all. It's an opening, a vast pupil in the eye of reality itself, gazing down upon our world. And in that gaze, I feel myself being unmade. Voice becoming distorted. If anyone finds this recording, time is not what we thought. Reality is not fixed. We are being observed by something that exists outside our understanding, and that observation is changing us. The world is not ending. It's being, long pause, perceived differently. They're here now. Elijah, Collier, Hartwell, all reaching for me with hands that seem to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. The water is rising. The sky is watching, and I think I'm starting to see. Recording ends in static. Written journal entry, date unknown. I found paper and a pen. The dictaphone is gone. Lost in the flood or taken, I don't know. Electronics function erratically now anyway. Words written in ink seem more permanent, more real, as reality itself becomes increasingly fluid. The paper ripples strangely under my touch, as if it remembers being part of a living tree. Everything remembers now. How long has it been since the water took me? Hours? Days? The concept of linear time feels quaint now, like a childhood superstition I've outgrown. I experience moments in kaleidoscopic fragments, some sharp and vivid, others blurred and overlapping. I remember Elijah and the others reaching for me as the water rose. I remember struggling, then acceptance. I remember drowning, but also breathing. Water filling my lungs, but somehow sustaining rather than suffocating. My consciousness fragmenting, then reassembling with new connections. They brought me to what they call the communion chamber, the school's auditorium transformed into something between a scientific laboratory and a religious temple. The walls are covered in equations and diagrams, mathematical formulas bleeding into mystical symbols, as if science itself is evolving beyond its boundaries. The floor is submerged under 6 inches of that strange, animate water, which flows in currents that form complex, shifting mandalas. I'm seated on the stage, which has been arranged as an observation point. From here, I can see through the skylights to the transformed sky above. The anomaly, the second sun, now occupies nearly 70% of visible space. Its center has developed complexity beyond description, layers upon layers of geometric patterns that seem to rotate through dimensions I previously couldn't perceive. Looking at it doesn't burn my eyes anymore. Instead, it feels like my vision is expanding, as if I'm growing additional neural pathways dedicated solely to comprehending its impossible architecture. Major Hartwell sits beside me, documenting everything in a ledger with mechanical precision. Her transformation is more advanced than mine. Skin luminous, eyes now entirely horizontal slits that somehow convey more awareness, not less. She speaks rarely, and when she does, her voice overlaps with itself, sentences beginning before the previous ones end, yet remaining comprehensible. The objects are descending, she informed me moments ago, pointing toward the windows. The sky gives birth, and she's right. They're coming down, pieces of the anomaly breaking off and falling toward Earth. Not falling exactly, more like extending downward, tendrils of impossible light stretching from the rift to touch the ground. They move with deliberate slowness, each one selecting its landing site with apparent purpose. The military convoy that once surrounded this facility has been repurposed. Soldiers who resisted the change were evacuated days ago or hours. Weeks. Those who remained have taken up positions around the projected landing sites, establishing perimeters with strange new equipment, devices that pulse with the same rhythm as the water underfoot. Sheriff Collier returned an hour ago. He'd been sent to intercept one of the objects that landed in the swamp. What came back wears his uniform and carries his badge, but moves differently, perceives differently. His body appears simultaneously solid and fluid, edges blurring slightly when he moves quickly. When he speaks, his words seem to arrive in my mind a moment before my ears register the sound. "It recognized me," he reported to Major Hartwell, his voice eerily calm. "The object, it responded to my approach by unfolding." He placed something on the table before me, a fragment that appears metallic yet organic, glistening with that same pearlescent quality that now infects our skin. It pulses subtly, synchronizing with the beating of my heart as I reach toward it. "Don't touch it directly," Major Hartwell warned, her voice rippling. "Not yet. Your transition is incomplete." Sheriff Collier's eyes, those horizontal slits, regarded me with what might have been pity or perhaps impatience. "You're still fighting the perception shift," he noted, holding onto linear causality. "It's easier once you let go." "Let go of what?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "The illusion that observer and observed are separate. Throughout the facility, others are undergoing the same transformation at different rates. Some, like Elijah, transitioned almost immediately upon exposure. Others resist, their minds fracturing under the strain of conflicting perceptual frameworks. I hear them sometimes, screaming in languages that don't exist yet, their voices harmonizing with the cosmic frequencies now audible in quiet moments. For hours later, by my watch, which now runs backward, I witnessed the full descent of an object. It selected a landing site approximately 2 miles from the facility, visible through the broken east wall where military vehicles had smashed through during the partial evacuation. The object appeared as a spiraling column of light, not descending so much as extending downward from the anomaly, maintaining connection like an umbilical cord. As it touched Earth, the ground around it transformed, soil and grass reconstituting into concentric rings of that same pearlescent substance. Plants within the affected area didn't die but changed, flowers blooming in impossible colors, trees bending toward the object as if magnetically drawn, their trunks twisting into helices. A team was dispatched to establish a perimeter. I watched through binoculars as they approached in hazmat suits, carrying instruments. At approximately 20 meters from the object, they stopped. Not by choice, it seemed, but as if encountering an invisible barrier. Then, one by one, their suits began to dissolve, the material flowing like liquid before reconstituting as something new. Something that allowed the object's light to permeate their bodies. Even from this distance, I could see the change overtake them, that familiar luminescence spreading across exposed skin, their movements becoming synchronized. When they returned an hour later, they moved as a single entity with multiple bodies, perfectly coordinated, their minds apparently linked. Major Hartwell was unsurprised. "The objects are not technology as we understand it," she explained. "They're perception engines, devices that alter the observer's ability to process reality. They're preparing us." "For what?" I asked. "For what comes through when the tear is complete." She showed me classified documents, reports from the Baltic site before communication was lost. The tear there expanded until it covered the entire visible sky, at which point something began to emerge. The final transmissions described it as a forest of light extending downward, branching like neurons, each tendril terminating in what appears to be an observational apparatus. "The world is being rewired neuron by neuron, perception by perception." Later, I found Elijah in what was once the school cafeteria, now a processing center for the transformed. He was different. His body elongated slightly, movements fluid beyond human capability. Eyes evolved beyond even the horizontal slits into something more complex, with facets like an insect's. He recognized me instantly. "Casey," he said, my name sounding musical in his transformed voice. "You're still in transition, still recording events as if they're separate from yourself." "I'm trying to understand," I told him. "Understanding comes after acceptance, not before." "The water helps." He guided me to a large container of the luminous liquid that everyone here now consumes instead of normal water. I've been avoiding it, drinking from my own dwindling supply. Elijah dipped a cup and offered it to me. "This will accelerate your transition," he said. "Make it less painful." I hesitated. "What am I transitioning into, Elijah? What are you now?" His expression shifted into something both alien and compassionate. "We're becoming suitable observers, Casey. Our original perceptual framework was too limited to comprehend what's coming through. They couldn't communicate with us as we were. Our brains would burn out trying to process them. So they're upgrading us perception by perception, neuron by neuron." "They? Who are they?" "The ones who have been watching us since before we had eyes to see with. The ones who exist in the space between spaces. They've been trying to reach us for millennia, but the barrier was too thick. Now it's thinning." An emergency broadcast crackled through the facility's speakers, the message distorted but still comprehensible. "Attention all remaining unaltered personnel. The phenomenon has achieved critical mass. Evacuation zone extended to 200-mile radius. All unaffected civilians must relocate immediately. This area is now classified as a reality exclusion zone. Repeat, this is now a reality exclusion zone." Elijah smiled at the announcement, a gesture made unsettling by how his features moved in ways human musculature shouldn't allow. "They still think they can contain this," he said, almost pitying. "They don't understand that reality itself is being rewritten. There's nowhere to evacuate to, only delaying the inevitable." I looked down at my hands, seeing the subtle glow beginning to spread beneath my skin despite my precautions. The change is happening regardless of my resistance. Through the windows, more objects are descending. Dozens now, their light tendrils connecting sky to earth like the filaments of some vast celestial jellyfish. Where they touch down, reality ripples outward in concentric rings of transformation. Sheriff Collier returned with what remains of his deputies, all transformed, all moving with that unsettling synchronicity. They reported that the town has been completely altered, its inhabitants either evacuated or changed. Buildings have begun to reconfigure, materials flowing like wax to form new structures that serve purposes I can't comprehend. The sky above grows more impossible by the hour. Stars visible in daylight, moving in patterns that map neural pathways rather than orbital mechanics. The regular sun, when it appears, seems small and insignificant beside the vast pupil of the anomaly. Major Hartwell just approached me, her movements now so fluid she seems to glide rather than walk. "It's time, Casey," she said, her voice resonating at multiple frequencies simultaneously. "Your expertise is needed. The objects are communicating through atmospheric patterns. We need you to help us interpret." She handed me a cup of the luminous liquid. My last chance to choose my path. But is it really a choice when reality itself is being rewritten around me? The pen grows heavy in my hand. The paper beneath it ripples with increasing urgency, as if becoming impatient with my hesitation. Outside, the objects continue their descent. Written journal pages found separated from binding. I drank the water. The moment it touched my lips, I understood why the others had embraced the change. The liquid carried information, not just chemical signals but actual knowledge, flooding my system with awareness that bypassed normal sensory channels. As it coursed through me, I could feel my neural pathways reorganizing, new connections forming between previously isolated regions of my brain. Colors expanded beyond the visible spectrum. Sounds revealed harmonics I'd never perceived before. And time unfolded into something multidimensional, moments no longer confined to linear progression. My resistance had been futile all along. I see that now. Major Hartwell brought me to what they're calling the interpretation chamber. Formerly the school gymnasium, now transformed into an environment more suited to our evolved perceptions. The walls breathe subtly, surfaces rippling with data visualizations that respond to our thoughts. The ceiling has been removed entirely, replaced by a transparent membrane that offers unobstructed views of the transformed sky. The second sun now dominates everything above us, its pupil-like center a vast window into elsewhere. Around it, stars arrange and rearrange themselves in patterns that I now recognize as a form of communication, a cosmic language written in celestial bodies. What I previously saw as random stellar movement now reveals itself as a complex grammatical structure, each configuration conveying concepts beyond human vocabulary. Here on the ground, my meteorological expertise has found new purpose. The atmospheric patterns surrounding the objects follow mathematical principles I can decipher, wave functions, pressure differentials, and thermal gradients combining to form messages. They've been trying to communicate through weather patterns for centuries, Major Hartwell explained, her voice resonating at frequencies that carried additional layers of meaning. Ancient civilizations sensed it intuitively, reading omens in cloud formations, divine messages in unusual atmospheric phenomena. They weren't wrong, just limited in their perception. I spent hours or perhaps days, time measurement feels increasingly irrelevant, analyzing atmospheric data collected from around the landing sites. The patterns are unmistakable. Information encoded in barometric pulses, wind currents, and electromagnetic fluctuations. A language of weather speaking directly to those now capable of listening. Their message, as best I can translate it: "We have always been here. You are becoming ready." Time unknown, perception marker 37. The military presence has evolved. Those soldiers who embrace transformation now serve as what they call transition guides, helping newcomers adapt to perceptual shifts. Those who resisted have either evacuated beyond the exclusion zone or been confined to specialized chambers where standard reality is artificially maintained. Small bubbles of old physics within the expanding sphere of new laws. I encountered one such soldier today, a young private being held in a shielded room, his mind breaking under the strain of conflicting realities. Through the observation glass, I could see him trying to perform simple tasks, stacking blocks, writing his name, but his hands kept passing through solid objects as if they weren't there, while firmly grasping empty air. Perceptual dissonance, explained the attending physician, her eyes now completely transformed into multifaceted orbs that captured light from angles impossible in Euclidean geometry. His brain cannot reconcile what was with what is becoming. He sees both simultaneously but can interact with neither fully. "Can you help him?" I asked. "Only through complete transition. The intermediate state is unsustainable." I caught my reflection in the glass, my own transformation accelerating since drinking the water. My skin now emanates a subtle luminescence, and my eyes have developed those characteristic horizontal pupils, though not yet evolved to the insectoid complexity of Elijah's or the physician's. I exist in an in-between state, straddling perceptual frameworks. Speaking of Elijah, he found me as I left the medical wing, moving with that uncanny fluidity that marks the fully transformed. "You've begun the journey," he observed, those multifaceted eyes taking in more of me than just my physical form. "But you're still anchoring yourself to old paradigms, still documenting as if you're separate from what you observe." He gestured to my journal. "That's why you cling to writing. It gives you the illusion of objective distance. Some things should be recorded," I argued, "for those who come after." His expression shifted into something between pity and amusement. "After? You're still thinking linearly. There is no after, only expansion. Those who haven't yet transformed will transform. Those who resist will fracture. The wave is universal." As if to emphasize his point, emergency sirens began blaring. Not the familiar electronic tones, but something organic, pulsating sounds that seemed to emanate from the building itself. Attention! Reality breach has expanded beyond containment parameters. All remaining standard perception personnel must evacuate immediately. Transformation zones now cover 27% of continental United States. Similar expansions reported globally. This is not a drill. Elijah smiled at the announcement, revealing teeth that had begun to crystallize into translucent structures. The military still believes geography matters, that distance provides safety. They don't understand that space itself is being rewritten. Later, after seeing the map room, I've just come from what was once the school's geography classroom, now converted into what they call the map room. The transformation of our world is being tracked there, visualized on a three-dimensional projection that hovers above what used to be classroom desks. The map shows 4 distinct zones expanding outward from the original anomaly sites: Florida, Baltic, Baikal, and Pacific. Each zone marked by concentric rings of color indicating degrees of transformation. At the centers, reality has been completely rewritten. In the outermost rings, subtle effects are just beginning. What struck me most was how the zones are not expanding uniformly in all directions. They follow patterns, flowing along waterways, accelerating through population centers, moving slower through arid regions. The water connection is undeniable. More disturbing was the temporal data overlay, showing how time flows differently within each zone, accelerating in some areas, nearly stopping in others, even reversing in small pockets. Causality itself is becoming localized rather than universal. Sheriff Collier was there, coordinating what remains of local law enforcement. All transformed now, their police role evolved into something between security and spiritual guidance for new arrivals. He noticed my interest in the map and approached. "The transformation follows consciousness," he explained, his voice carrying harmonics that tickled my newly sensitive hearing. Areas with higher population density transform faster because there are more minds to perceive the change, more observers to collapse quantum possibilities into new realities. "And the water?" I asked. "Water remembers, carries information. It's the perfect medium for the transition, flowing everywhere, connecting everything, comprising most of our bodies. They chose it deliberately. The entities from beyond the tear." "Entities is too limiting a concept," he replied. "Think bigger. Think foundational." Before I could question him further, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. A military convoy had arrived, untransformed soldiers in sealed environmental suits, escorting scientists carrying equipment I didn't recognize. Their presence felt jarring, their movements rigid and limited compared to the fluid grace of the transformed. Their commander engaged with Major Hartwell in what appeared to be a heated exchange. From my position, I could hear fragments. "National security threat of unprecedented. No longer a question of containment but understanding. Authorized to use any means necessary." The commander's attention suddenly fixed on me, his eyes narrowing behind his protective faceplate. He pointed, and 2 soldiers broke away, moving toward me with purpose. I fled, finding refuge in a storage closet where I now write these words. The building has become a maze of transformed spaces, some areas recognizable as the school it once was, others completely reimagined into organic technological hybrid environments that serve functions I'm only beginning to comprehend. Through a small window, I can see the sky. The second sun pulses in patterns that now carry meaning I can partially grasp. Messages about acceleration, about thresholds being reached, about imminent completion. The stars around it dance in increasingly complex configurations, mathematical symphonies written in light. And somewhere, in the spaces between thoughts, I feel a presence, vast and patient, curious and ancient, waiting for us to finish becoming whatever it is we're becoming. The door handle is "Someone has found me." It's Major Hartwell. Her transformation has progressed dramatically since I last saw her. Her form now only approximately human, proportions subtly altered, skin entirely translucent, revealing intricate patterns of luminescence beneath. "They're here to stop it," she says, her voice resonating directly in my mind rather than through air. "They can't, but they'll try, and in trying, they'll cause damage to the process. We need to protect the objects. Come with me." "Why me?" I ask, though I already sense the answer forming in my reconstructing mind. "Because you understand both worlds now. You can translate between perceptions. You can help them see. Outside, I hear vehicles moving, weapons being readied. The untransformed making their last stand against evolution itself. I close my journal and follow Hartwell into the shifting corridors, where walls breathe and floors ripple like water, where reality itself seems to be remembering that it once was something else and could be something more. Through the window at the end of the hall, I glimpse the sky one more time. The stars are spelling out a clear message now, one that needs no translation. Look up together, written on fragments of paper, assembled in approximate order. I'm writing frantically, in moments stolen between chaos. The paper keeps trying to transform under my fingers, characters shifting into symbols I recognize but can't quite read. My own handwriting evolves mid-sentence, becoming more fluid, more complex. Like everything else, language itself is changing. The military operation has gone catastrophically wrong. Major Hartwell led me through corridors that seemed to reconfigure themselves as we moved, spaces expanding and contracting according to some alien geometry. We reached what was once the school auditorium, now a vast chamber housing one of the objects, a fragment of the second sun that had descended yesterday. Up close, the object defied conventional description. It existed simultaneously as solid crystalline structure and fluid energy, its surface rippling with patterns that mirrored neural activity. It hovered several feet above the floor, connected to the ceiling by a column of light that extended upward through the roof, maintaining connection with the anomaly above. Around it stood the fully transformed Elijah, Sheriff Collier, and dozens of others arranged in concentric circles. They moved in perfect synchronization, bodies swaying to rhythms I could almost perceive, their transformed eyes fixed on the object. They're stabilizing the connection, Major Hartwell explained. Each object requires a certain density of consciousness to maintain its physical presence here. Before I could respond, the walls exploded inward. Military forces breached the building from multiple points simultaneously. Soldiers in sealed environmental suits carrying weapons I'd never seen before. Not conventional firearms, but devices emitting focused pulses of something that disrupted the transformed matter they touched, forcing it back into conventional physics. Reality stabilization technology, Hartwell hissed, her voice distorting with what might have been pain. They think they can force localized quantum collapse. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, securing the perimeter and advancing toward the object. Leading them was a man in a more elaborate suit, carrying what appeared to be a portable version of the same technology, aimed directly at the object. What happened next occurred too rapidly for my partially transformed perception to fully process. The object pulsed, emitting a wave of energy that rippled outward. Where it touched the soldiers, their equipment malfunctioned, suits depressurizing, weapons failing. Several collapsed immediately, their bodies convulsing as the transformed atmosphere infiltrated their protection. Others maintained position, firing their disruption devices at the object. Where the pulses struck, the object's surface dimmed momentarily, its connection to the anomaly above thinning. Elijah and the other transformed moved to intercept, their bodies flowing with impossible grace. What followed wasn't combat in any conventional sense. More like competing fields of reality overlapping, each trying to impose its rules on the other. Soldiers would aim weapons that suddenly passed through transformed bodies as if they were holograms, while the transformed would reach for soldiers only to have their limbs snap back to conventional physics upon contact. Major Hartwell pulled me behind a column as chaos erupted. "This is pointless," she said, her voice resonating at frequencies that made my teeth vibrate. "They don't understand that they're fighting against evolution itself." Through the broken windows, I could see military vehicles surrounding the building, more soldiers deploying what looked like enormous antenna arrays. Quantum field generators, Hartwell called them, designed to reinforce conventional physics within their range. Above, the sky was transforming faster now, the second sun pulsing erratically. The stars around it moved with apparent agitation, their patterns becoming increasingly complex and urgent. Something was accelerating. "They're destabilizing the transition," Hartwell said, her expression shifting to something like concern. though on her transformed features, emotions manifested differently. If the process is interrupted now, the tear could collapse catastrophically. A deafening alarm began blaring, not from the military equipment but from every electronic device in the building simultaneously. Emergency broadcasts overlapping. Attention all personnel. Quantum field instability detected. Reality exclusion zone expanding at unprecedented rate. All containment measures failing. Immediate evacuation recommended to minimum safe distance. Overlapping with "This is an emergency alert." Unexplained atmospheric phenomenon spreading across southeastern United States. All citizens advised to seek underground shelter. Do not look at the sky. Repeat, do not look at the sky. The military commander, apparently recognizing the futility of their assault, ordered a retreat. As soldiers withdrew, several removed their helmets. Whether from equipment failure or choice, I couldn't tell. The transformed atmosphere entered their systems instantly, their bodies convulsing as the change overtook them. One soldier collapsed near our position, his body twisting as luminescence spread beneath his skin. His eyes found mine as the transformation began, horizontal pupils forming. "What's happening to me?" he gasped. Before I could answer, the object pulsed again. Brighter this time, its light penetrating everything. The connection to the anomaly above strengthened, the column widening into a torrent of energy that shattered what remained of the ceiling. Through this new opening, I could see the second sun directly. It had changed again, its pupil-like center now a vast spiral, rotating slowly, drawing everything toward it. The sky around it had fractured, literally cracked like glass, dark lines spreading outward from the anomaly, revealing glimpses of something else behind our reality. Something infinite and geometrically impossible. The soldier's transformation accelerated under this direct exposure. His body elongated, skin becoming translucent, eyes evolving rapidly toward the multifaceted structures of the fully transformed. He screamed, but the sound modulated into harmonics that resonated with the object's pulsations. "The veil is thinning faster than anticipated," Hartwell observed. "We need to move to the convergence point." "What's happening?" I asked, my own transformation accelerating under the direct light from above, thoughts multiplying and fragmenting as new neural connections formed. "The military intervention has destabilized the careful equilibrium. The entities were managing a gradual transition to minimize shock to our system. Now they're losing control of the tear." Through the fractured walls of the building, I could see the landscape transforming more rapidly. Trees twisting into helical structures, roads rippling like liquid, the very ground becoming translucent in expanding patches. The water from nearby canals had risen into the air, forming complex three-dimensional patterns that hung suspended, defying gravity. Major Hartwell led me through what remained of the building, toward the gymnasium where Elijah and the others were regrouping. The fully transformed moved with increasing urgency, their bodies sometimes passing through solid matter as if physics itself was becoming optional. In the gym, I found Sheriff Collier coordinating the transformed, arranging them in precise geometric formations around a central point where the floor had opened into a swirling vortex of the luminous water. "The fracture is accelerating," he announced as we entered, his voice overlapping with itself in cascading echoes. "We need to establish a stabilization field before complete collapse." Through the shattered windows, I could see military vehicles retreating, some drivers abandoning their vehicles as transformation overtook them mid-flight. The quantum field generators they deployed were still active but malfunctioning, their effects creating bubbles of conflicting reality that collided and merged in surreal ways. Areas where objects fell upward, where time visibly flowed backward, where matter phased between states. Above it all, the sky continued to fracture, cracks spreading from horizon to horizon. Through these fissures, impossible geometries were becoming visible, vast structures that seemed to extend in directions I couldn't name, inhabited by presences that registered in my transforming perception as intelligences so vast they used galaxies as neurons. The emergency broadcasts had devolved into garbled fragments, multiple voices overlapping. Reality collapse imminent in sectors. All personnel evacuate beyond theoretical maximum. God help us all. Interspersed with another voice, this one unnaturally calm and clear. Attention observers. Transition phase accelerated. Prepare for direct interface. The veil dissolves. See with new eyes. Elijah approached me, his form now barely recognizable as human, transformed into something that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he said, his voice carrying layers of meaning beyond the words. "The transition was meant to be gradual, giving your minds time to adapt. Now you must make a choice." "What choice?" I asked, feeling my own transformation accelerating, thoughts multiplying exponentially as new neural pathways formed. Whether to complete the process or remain trapped between states when the tear collapses. Those caught in transition will exist in perpetual perceptual dissonance, unable to fully perceive either reality. Sheriff Collier joined us, his badge now a crystalline structure that pulsed in time with the object. "We're establishing a stabilization field, a bubble of coherent reality where transformation can complete safely. Outside that field," he gestured toward the fracturing world beyond the windows. Through those windows, I could see something enormous beginning to descend through the largest of the reality fractures. Not an object like the others, but something alive and aware, vast beyond comprehension. Where it touched our atmosphere, physics rewrote itself completely. The choice Elijah mentioned wasn't really a choice at all. The world as I had known it was ending, not in destruction but in transformation. I could embrace the new reality or be crushed between collapsing possibilities. Major Hartwell placed her hand on my shoulder, her touch sending cascades of information through my system. "Come," she said simply. "It's time to see clearly." She led me toward the center of the formation, toward the swirling vortex of luminous water that connected directly to the fractured sky above. Around us, the transformed had begun to synchronize their movements, generating patterns of energy that stabilized the space within their circle. Outside that circle, reality itself was coming apart at the seams. My last act with conventional perception is to record these words. What comes next cannot be described in human language. The water rises to greet me. The sky reaches down. The second sun sees me at last. And I, final voice recording, recovered from partially transformed digital storage device. I don't know if anyone will ever hear this. The recording equipment keeps shifting between states, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent energy patterned with neural-like networks. It's the last piece of technology one have that still functions in any recognizable way. Even time has become flexible. I've been speaking for what feels like minutes, but the counter sometimes jumps forward by hours, sometimes runs backward. The sky is gone. That's not metaphorical. The sky as we understood it no longer exists. Where blue atmosphere once contained clouds and a single sun, there is now only them. The entities, the observers. What we mistakenly called a second sun was merely their first intrusion into our limited perception, a pupil dilating to examine us more closely. After the military's failed containment operation, the fractures in reality expanded exponentially. Major Hartwell guided me into the stabilization field that Sheriff Collier and the other transformed had created in the gymnasium. The luminous vortex at the center, what I can only describe as a direct conduit to what lies beyond, enveloped me completely. I expected death. What I experienced was expansion. My consciousness unfurled into dimensions I previously couldn't perceive. Information flooded my neural pathways, not as data points to be processed but as direct experiential knowledge. In that moment, I understood what the second sun truly was. Not a celestial body but a sensory organ of something vast beyond human comprehension. They had been watching us, studying us. For how long, I can't say. Time as I now experience it renders such questions meaningless. What matters is that we had reached a threshold in our development that warranted more direct observation. And now, intervention. When I emerged from the vortex, my transformation was complete. I could see the entities clearly, vast intelligences that exist in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously present across multiple realities. They don't invade our world. They reveal that our world has always been a subset of theirs, a single layer in an infinite stack of existence. The military's quantum field generators, intended to reinforce conventional physics, had catastrophically destabilized the careful equilibrium the entities had established. What was meant to be a gradual revelation became a violent collision of realities. Through my transformed perception, I watched as the horizon itself dissolved. The boundary between earth and sky blurred, then disappeared entirely. Matter entered states that defy classification: solid, liquid, gas, plasma, all simultaneously, with properties of each and none. Elijah found me wandering through what had once been the town center, now transformed into crystalline structures that continually reconfigure themselves according to the thoughts of those nearby. "You've adapted well," he said, his voice resonating directly in my transformed consciousness. Many couldn't reconcile the perceptual shift. Their minds fractured. He led me to what remained of my monitoring station, equipment now partially fused with surrounding matter, screens displaying readings in mathematical systems I somehow now understood intuitively. "The entities are attempting to stabilize the tear," Elijah explained. "The military's intervention created cascade failures they didn't anticipate." "What happens now?" I asked, watching as a flock of birds flew overhead, their bodies intermittently phasing between flesh and luminous patterns of pure information. "That depends on how many successfully transform," he replied. "Critical mass is needed for full integration. Without it, this region will remain a reality exclusion zone, neither fully here nor there." Major Hartwell appeared beside us, emerging from what looked like a fold in space itself. Her form had evolved further since I'd last seen her, less humanoid, more a complex arrangement of geometric patterns that somehow retained her essence. "The broadcasts have stopped," she informed us. "Global communications networks are failing as the exclusion zone expands." The last emergency alert reached the Pacific coast. The military had withdrawn completely, establishing a perimeter hundreds of miles away. Within that perimeter, transformation proceeded at varying rates. Those who embraced it, like myself, achieved a stable state. Those who resisted experienced distortions, fragmentation of consciousness, temporal dislocation. Sheriff Collier appeared, his form now a complex lattice of light and matter. "The entities have established contact with 17 other sites globally. Convergence points, like ours." "Other second suns?" I asked. "Different manifestations," he corrected, "tailored to local cultural frameworks. What appears as celestial to us manifests through different metaphors elsewhere." Together, we moved toward what had once been the town square, now a vast amphitheater where hundreds of transformed gathered. Above us, the entities had become more directly present, vast intelligences descending through the tear in reality, their presence warping space-time itself. Communication with them isn't verbal or even symbolic. It's direct transmission of concept clusters that unfold in the receiving consciousness. Their message, as I understand it: we exist in a multiverse of infinite potential, but isolation between realities has been breaking down. What we interpreted as a cosmic threat is actually cosmic integration, the natural entropy of separation giving way to connection. Our transformation allows us to exist in this integrated state without perceptual dissonance. Not everyone transformed successfully. I found pockets of people caught between states, existing in perpetual perceptual crisis, unable to fully process either conventional reality or the expanded state. They wander the transformed landscape like ghosts, perceiving fragments of both worlds but making sense of neither. Time itself has become inconsistent. Moments stretch into eternities. Hours collapse into instants. Causality operates differently here. Effects sometimes preceding causes. Events occurring simultaneously across what we once perceived as temporal distance. The second sun, the entity's sensory organ, has expanded to encompass the entire visible sky. Through it, I can sometimes glimpse other worlds, other manifestations. Cities of impossible geometry where what we would call physics operates by completely different principles. Oceans of conscious energy. Beings composed of pure mathematics. Yesterday, if that term still has meaning, I returned to the beach where I first noticed the anomalous readings that preceded the second sun's appearance. The water no longer meets the shore in any conventional sense. Instead, it exists in a state of perpetual transition between liquid and something else, a form of matter that responds directly to conscious observation, reshaping itself to reflect the observer's thoughts. Standing there, watching the transformed ocean ripple with patterns mirroring my own neural activity, I felt a presence behind me. Turning, I found what remained of my recording equipment hovering several feet off the ground, partially transformed into a hybrid of technology and living tissue. That's when I decided to make this final recording. I don't know if anyone outside the exclusion zone will ever hear these words. If you do, understand that what's happening isn't an ending but a transition. The universe is larger, stranger, and more intimately connected than we ever imagined. The entities aren't conquerors or saviors, they're facilitators of an evolutionary leap in consciousness. Those who can adapt, survive. Those who cannot, I've tried to help them, but their minds reject the new information, causing feedback loops of perceptual crisis. I'm going to join the others at the central convergence point now. The entities have established what Elijah calls a reality anchor, a stable node where transformed consciousness can exist without dissonance. From there, we'll attempt to stabilize the boundaries of the exclusion zone, preventing further uncontrolled expansion. The horizon has disappeared completely. Earth and sky have become meaningless distinctions. Matter and energy interchange freely. Time flows in multiple directions simultaneously. And yet, in this chaos of transformation, I found a strange kind of peace. My scientific curiosity, the drive that first led me to investigate the anomalous readings, remains intact, though now directed toward understanding realities far beyond conventional physics. The second sun sees us, and now, at last, we see it. I don't fear what comes next. Fear requires uncertainty, and in the presence of the entities, uncertainty itself has transformed into something else. Potential, perhaps. Infinite potential. If anyone outside hears this, don't fight the light when it comes. The transformation hurts only if you resist it. Look into the second sun. Let it look into you. The horizon awaits,